I will start the Wednesday, April 26th, 2023 meeting of the Norton Finance Committee. And I will take a roll call to see who is here so far. Kevin. Not yet. Okay. Paula.
Here.
Steve. Trace.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Cody. He mentioned he might be late. And Zach.
Here.
All right. We got plenty to start. So we shall. Mr. Units, we'll get some stuff in before our 7:15 hearing. So everybody knows that I'll need to close this meeting, open the hearing, and then we'll go from there. See if anyone's here to discuss it.
All right. And if we could go to Article 12 on the special, because the treasurer collector is on, and I'm sure Paula won't take more than 15 minutes to explain prudent investor to us.
No pressure. Hi, Paula.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Great.
So right now, the board for the Hicks Fund and also the Select Board have asked that we try to move towards a prudent investor standard. That is something that I've actually done in Cohasset, and it's worked out really well. There has been, what that is moving from a very restrictive list. It's referred to as the legal list. And it is a very narrow range of stocks and the corporate bonds related to that and fixed income units that you can invest in. And it doesn't hit all the sectors. And even within a lot of the investment sectors, there may only be one or two or three options within those. So as far as diversity is concerned, it's somewhat limited. Well, it's a lot limited, actually. And these were chosen several years ago, and they haven't necessarily kept up with today. So a lot of the big heavy hitters that you might know about now, like Google and Apple and Facebook, they're not even on the list. IBM's not even on the list. There has been a move within the Collector Treasurers Association, and that would be all the collectors and treasurers throughout the state, to try and get legislation to allow communities to choose to go to the prudent investor by way of a town meeting. There's about a half a dozen different options, different attempts over the last several years to do that. The state legislature doesn't seem to be too keen on that, but the way to do it is through a special act, so it would be town by town. You would go through town meeting and then go to the state legislator and ask, and they would then potentially approve it. And I'm not sure what the rationale for them is, but they seem to want to do it on a case-by-case basis, as opposed to allowing communities to choose on their own. So right now, by law, the treasurers, you're supposed to do the best you can with the money. You have to keep in mind safety, liquidity, and yield. Those are the three things that we're taught in our Treasurer 101 class. So you have to make sure that the money is safe and that it's liquid, so it's available to pay bills as bills are needed. And, different monies have different, lengths of time. Obviously, your general funds are needed relatively quickly to go ahead and pay the bills. But you've got things like trust funds for cemeteries and scholarships that you can only spend the interest. You have to maintain the principal. So there you have a lot of money that's not going to be spent for a very long period of time. And then you also have to worry about yield. It's not like you can put everything under your mattress and call it a day. There is some responsibility to get a reasonable amount of interest.
FinCom public hearing.
You want to get a certain amount of interest, make the money work for the town. So it's always a balancing act to see, where you're going to invest. And I have, and every treasurer I've known have always hired investment advisors that specialize in this kind of thing. Obviously, they're investing and they're very familiar with municipalities and the limitations they have with what we call the legal list. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are actually times when the legal list does better, but over the long haul, it does not, because it is quite limiting. Just to give you an example, and yeah, some of these stocks too may not necessarily be ones you want to invest in. I know some folks have issues with Altria, which is Philip Morris. There's a lot of drug companies in there, but people may take exception to AIG or Bank of America, McDonald's, that kind of thing. When you look at the different sectors, there is no representation whatsoever in energy, materials, telecom, and real estate. You can't invest in those. So there's some of your diversification is gone right off the bat. When you look at information technology, and so all your technology companies, there's only one that you can invest in, and it's Hewlett Packard. So that's not even necessarily the number one technology stock that I would pick today. There was a time probably, and so if Hewlett Packard isn't doing well, an investment advisor might say, you know what, I'm better off not being exposed to any technology rather than investing in Hewlett Packard. And consumer discretionaries, the only option is McDonald's. For utilities, you only have two options. Banks, you only have, or financials, you only have two options, and industrials, you have three. Then for healthcare, you have 6, and for consumer staples, you have 7, and that is your 22. Those are your 22 stocks. So it is difficult to be completely diversified. And, you know, as much as there may be a time or two when the legal list does really well, there are more times when different sectors of the market are taken off, and we just have to sit by and watch it happen. So what we are proposing is that we move towards the prudent investor standard. It would, what we're asking for is to support that decision in town meeting. There's going to be an article on town meeting to go ahead and do that. Whether we have it, we would still have an advisor. We have investment policies. Those would be revisited and would take into account the prudent investor, but there still would be standards that the investors would have to follow. You know, whether it's a split between like fixed income and equities, you can still maintain, you know, a 70-30 split, 60-40, whatever is appropriate, and that could still be adjusted as you would today. So let's see. And so as far as specific accounts that we're talking about, it would be trust funds like the Hicks, the Hodges, the scholarship ones, the Randall Scholarship, the Drain, the Fernandez, the cemetery perpetual care funds, Smith Flower funds, the athletic fund, and they need to be looked at individually, because I would have to look at those documents and make sure there's nothing that would preclude the prudent investor standard within those documents. It's not likely, but it is possible that it says that it needs to be kept in a bank account at this particular bank. So I would have to review those documents as well. As far as other towns that have done it, Newton, Brookline, Northampton, Sterling, Peabody. I mean, I did it in Cohasset. There's also the Mohawk Trail Regional School District and the Sherborne Library. So if you folks are in agreement, if it goes through town meeting, the next thing for us to do is reach out to the state legislators and get their support to introduce a bill, a special act at the state level. And then there would be a meeting at the state level, and hopefully we would be successful there with a vote. And then I believe the way it is written, that it would become effective upon passage. So as soon as the state legislature agreed and they give an effective date, we would be good to go.
Ooh. Is Paula frozen for everyone else?
She is.
Okay. That always makes things interesting. Paula, you were just frozen for us for about 10 seconds. And now you may be as well. Oh, man.
Paula, you may have to go out and come back in if you can hear us.
She was doing so great with her 15 minutes prior to the hearing. Thank you.
There you go. You're back.
All right, where did I leave off? Sorry.
We lost you for about 10 seconds, and then I imagine you probably noticed too. So
Okay,
you had
So-
mentioned that you would need a special meeting with the state legislature.
right. They would introduce the bill and hopefully support the bill with us. There would be a hearing at the State House, and there would be a group from the town to go and to testify, or basically to go to that hearing. There may very well be
Oh, man. Like no explanation for why it happens either.
Blame Comcast.
Seriously. Happy to blame Comcast.
Yeah.
All
Try
right.
again, Paula.
Oh,
She's back.
Okay, so state legislators, there'll be a hearing and there'd be a group from the town between different boards and the financial town meeting to go ahead and present our case and hope for a positive result. Any questions?
boom. Who's got questions?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bill.
So Paula, did you say there's still you'd still have advisors who would be doing the legwork as to what to invest in and what not to invest in, or how's that
Yes.
determined?
That is what,
While we're waiting for Paula, I know the Hicks Fund uses Bartholomew, and they still would have someone like that advising.
Okay.
2 more minutes, just to warn everyone of questions before we have to open the hearing. And I can see there are a lot of extra people on this meeting. So you can expect many, many, many questions during the hearing. Paula Linares, not Daniels. We hope that you're still with us.
She's back.
We
Okay.
see you.
so yes, there'd still be an advisor. A lot of these accounts don't have advisors now. They're just in bank accounts. So we could move those into something with an advisor and attach a legal list after we review the particular documents to make sure that that's acceptable.
And again, it's only a small segment, not the whole town and all our
Right.
millions upon millions of dollars just waiting to be invested.
Right, it's not stabilization or the capital stabilization, anything like that. It is literally, and there's some significant money there, but it's the Hicks Fund, the Randall, the various scholarships, various cemeteries. So actually, it has nothing to do other than the Hicks Fund because of the gift to the town for the operating budget. That's the only impact on the operating budget. Nothing else really, unless something else makes a gift donation, but it's nothing that the no general funds for the town. They're all permanent trusts, so they're set aside for specific purposes.
It is 7:15. Sorry to interrupt our riveting conversation about investments and prudent investments at that. However, we do have to close this meeting for the purpose of opening the hearing. So I will do both of those things. I think I have to take a roll call to do both. So enjoy that. The chair will entertain a motion to close this meeting temporarily so that we may have our FY24 budget hearing.
Madam
So
Chair.
moved.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Kevin, has he joined us? Doesn't look like it. Paula,
Yes.
Steve, not here. Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody, not here yet. Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes. So now I will open the hearing. I believe we also need a roll call for that. The public hearing. Is that right, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll take a roll call to open the public hearing for the FY24 budget of the town of Norton. Today is April 26th, 2023. Paula,
Here.
Trace,
Here.
Sandy,
Here.
Joe,
Here.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am here.
Madam Chair, did we actually need a motion on that?
Oh, that's a really good question.
We don't have a meeting. in
I don't
place.
usually have a motion to open our meeting. So if the procedure is otherwise, someone let me know.
You should have a motion to open the public hearing. Yes.
I would love that. I would love a motion to open. the
Madam
public-
Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I make a motion to open our public hearing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bill. And we've just called the roll call. So I think we're all in agreement. If anyone is not, please speak up and let us know. All right. Many people from the public, if anyone is here to ask any questions about the FY24 budget, now is your chance. I see some first names, so I'm not sure if those are folks who are here for the hearing or just wanted to tune in and hear all our riveting conversation or a later conversation. So I'm just going to give some space and time. What everybody have for lunch?
We must have unanimous support for this budget, not one person out of 20,000 to object.
Fantastic. Great. Good to know.
Well, if I could just thank the Finance Committee for all the work you're doing on the budget, and I know it's hard, and you only can work with what's available, and it's not up to you to determine if there's a debt exclusion or an override. If that's ever done and there's more money, then you deal with that. So I appreciate all the work that you do on the budget. It's not easy to work with what we have, but you get it done every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. There's always time to tell us how great we are. Any other comments? It's been a riveting 5 minutes. It took us more time to figure out the procedure than to actually have this meeting open. But I don't want to delay it any longer because we do have a bunch of things to get to. So if anyone is here to speak, ask questions of the FY24 budget, we would love to hear them now. Otherwise, the chair will entertain a motion to close the FY24 hearing.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I make a motion to close our FY24 public hearing.
Second,
Thanks, Bill. All righty, Paula,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes. So now I would like to, do I have to entertain a motion to reopen the meeting?
No.
26th.
Did you close to go into the pub? Yeah, you should,
I
you
did.
should.
Okay, so the chair will entertain a motion to reopen the April 26th FinCom meeting
Madam Chair,
at 7:21.
I make a motion to open our FinCom meeting.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you, Bill. Paula,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
We get a majority that says no, can we go home?
Frank Joe Parker, just follow procedures.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes, and we're back. What do we have next? Have we
Yeah.
closed the conversation? Does anybody have
Paul-
other questions for Paula?
Well, Madam Chair,
Yes, Bill.
does Article 12 specifically state, how small or what items are really impacted by this versus it could be anything and everything?
I have not reviewed Article
Looking at
12.
it now, and it does
specific.
specifically say to invest Town of Norton trust funds in accordance with the prudent investor rule.
Okay.
And that is she is saying it is limited to trust funds in the chat.
All right. Awesome.
Any other questions for Paula? All right, so is the board ready to make a recommendation on Article 12? Chair will entertain a motion. for the
Madam Chair,
special- Yes. Paula.
I move that we recommend Article 12 do I have to read the whole paragraph or to
No, just
authorize the select
indicate-
board? Yeah, to authorize.
Indicate
select
that it's the special town meeting. so
Special
there's no
town meeting,
confusion.
Article 12, to authorize select board to petition the general court for special legislation to authorize the town treasurer to invest Town of Norton trust funds in accordance with the prudent investor rule.
Second.
Second,
Thank you, Joe and Bill. I have a motion and a second to recommend Article 12 in the special town meeting. So I will take a roll call vote. Paula,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes.
How many votes do you have?
8,
8. Okay. Thank you.
8-2-0-2-0.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Units.
if we could, I promised Joe Byetta that I'd get him on by 7:30. And I know that Joe is on here. At the last meeting, there was discussion on the school budget, and the board had said that they would like to have Joe come in and speak on the budget.
and he cleared his schedule, and here he is. Thank you,
did.
Dr. Byetta.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike, and to the members of the committee and the general public. So I've been asked to kind of generally speak. I provided Mike my notes from earlier. I'll give you the laydown of the 2% as I believe is the current vote. I'll also tell you that there is some movement at the State House. None of it is very large for Norton, but at this point, every penny counts. The general increase of $666,645 will automatically 100% of that will go to the mandated budget, leaving the mandated budget short. The mandated budget was $1,374,198. I have no leeway in that budget. I'm required to hire the 4.6 positions that I have to hire. Currently, I have looked at every line item in there, consultant services and all that we use, and especially with some of the mental health issues that we're dealing with. There's not much movement there, if you will. That leaves, in that budget alone, the mandated budget, $707,553 short. 100% of that will be moved into the general education budget. General education budget was a level services budget with no new positions. It's all contractual obligations, no increases in terms of items. That was 1,658,335. So that makes the general education cut, actual cuts of $2,365,888. If you're not increasing positions and you're just meeting the needs of the level services, you're going to take the $707,000 for mandated, move it into the general, and we will have to cut $2,365,888 from the level services general education budget. Pretty devastating number. Pretty difficult number to get to in terms of how we would do it. There would be potentially a couple of things, and both of them require probably some understanding, as we've done in the past. The savings to retirees and resignations, expense lines, non-teaching positions, programs not related to special ed and ELL. That would include sports and activities, but more likely some of the after-school stuff that we do that we wouldn't be doing. The always daunting, wonderful increase to fees, restructure some of our schools, thereby cutting courses and opportunities. That's predominantly a 6 to 12 issue. The big ticket item of transportation, we're spending next year $2.2 million in transportation. Was barely over $1 million when I got here 10 years ago. So just think about what that means. The breakdown of that, so that you know, is our special education is 1.14 million of that, 2.2 million. So it's a pretty significant amount, including about $110,000 in that whole foster care and homelessness. I shared with Mike earlier this week, or Christine did, our business manager, through the idea that there are 690 families in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that are currently completely homeless with children in systems. So we have, for example, a student that we're picking up and dropping off from Boston. That's $50,000 worth of transportation for that student. That is back on us as a town, just to give you as an example of, and then most of the other ones are 9, 10, 11,000, but that number is growing under the McKinney-Vento requirements from the feds. Then the teaching staff would be basically number 8 on that list. As you know, we try to not get to that level. That would be predominantly to start with in 4th grade to 12th grade. But then once we get into the depths of trying to get to the last pennies, it could include K to 3 as well. The big picture items here are, as you know, for every unemployed employee, starting on the 16th, we get out on the 15th. Starting on the 16th, they can collect unemployment. So you've got to factor in 60 cents on the dollar for unemployment for those folks. So an example would be if you have, $750,000 worth of staffing cuts, you've got to find another $450,000 worth of unemployment costs. And it's pretty staggering number, right? Because now all of a sudden you're $1 million plus in the hole, not just the 750. And I don't know, I don't think that the town line item for unemployment right now could absorb that. It'd have to be done probably in the October town meeting, I'm thinking. If in fact those unemployment folks continue to just collect the unemployment. We are not replacing one of two retirees. The other ones are in special education and class size. I really don't have a choice right now. So the question really becomes on the FTEs, what can we put off to the October town meeting? That's never a good thing, but it's a gamble that's worked for us. We did just go through 2 months of employees not paying healthcare. I would anticipate free cash is going to be a good number. The continuation of survival of free cash. In this particular case, using transportation offset into October of $750,000, 750,000 would still lead to a double-digit number of layoffs. So the number just is lower versus higher when you look at that. And then the general attack plan for us would be what flexibility happens within the summer months. That's the big picture. I'm not going to get into it's 11, it's 12, it's 15, because I really need your vote first, your final vote, any changes that we can make as we walk up to town meeting, because it's April and I have staff that need to not be nervous about their jobs and continue at the same time telling them this is the budget that we're receiving. If it stays at 2%, then I'll give them some leeway after the school committee meeting tomorrow night on what to kind of anticipate. It won't be specific to a classroom or a position or non-administrative, administrative. It'll just be positions, and then we have to figure out, we have to go through protocols, as you know, union protocols with seniority and all of that stuff, as well as the potential of any resignations between now and June. We usually get 1 or 2. So then the question becomes, do we have to backfill it at all? Or are we able to just absorb that as a cut and not have to lay somebody off? There isn't a lot of leeway, as you probably know, when you're not increasing your general staff and positions, which we're not. You could always say, some of the discussion that happened, as you know, last year, after I noted the cuts to the budget as it pertains to the school committee vote. This is a much different discussion than that. This is an actual discussion of we're only getting X, so therefore it impacts us right away. If you can't fund special education, you're in the cliff. You're in the cliff, as projected a couple of years ago. So we will be in year 1 of probably 2 or 3 years of the cliff, depending on if the state changes anything within the formula. I will tell you that I've been very active working through my association. Currently, the $30 per student, which gets us about $65,000 in Chapter 70, is at worst going to be $60. So that brings us to $130. So there's another $65,000 or so that's going to be available in the fall, or we can utilize that money, if you will, now. There is a bill that's been forwarded for $100 per student, so that makes it about $225K instead of $65K. So it's another $160,000 more. That could offset some of this. I've petitioned for $175 per student, which gets us to about $450,000, which is a little bit of more of a good change for us, because that would put us positive about slightly under $400,000. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. The push that I've made is this is the 14th year of a $30 minimum aid. And the argument that I've made is, what was the value of $30 14 years ago versus today? I've made that adamantly clear to our elected officials. I will tell you that Representative Howard has been very responsive, as well as Barrows and Senator Feeney, on understanding what's going on. One of the big ones is the OSD 14%. That is the private school tuition increase, which has been, for my entire 15 years as superintendent, has been 1 to 3% increase. This year it's at 14%. That's another $230,000 to our budget. If that was at all able to be just the typical 2 or 3%, there's some more savings to the budget down the road that we could potentially have. Right now, they're utilizing a $75 million kind of a application process. We're not going to see a penny of that 75 million in that process. As you all know how that process works for us. And then lastly, we will do everything we can to just have the least minimal impact in the classroom, but there will be cuts to the classroom. And as you know, class sizes go up, so don't special education costs.
Just want to note that Cody has joined us at 7:36. Any questions?
Madam Chair,
Go right ahead, Bill.
Dr. Byetta, can you say again what the shortfall is in special education based on the budget?
Sure. The shortfall currently is, sorry, let me just grab my real numbers here. So the shortfall right now stands at $707,553 from the request or the increase of 1.374 million.
So the increase that's being proposed in the budget still leaves the special education budget 707,000 short?
So if we're asking the mandated total, which includes the 4.6 positions, is 1,374,198. If the budget is 2%, 666 minus that from 137, and you get the 707. That's our biggest. That's the biggest discussion that the town of Norton is going to have over the next few years. It's been a discussion we've had, but we've never had it at this level. This is the second year in my 10 years where we haven't been able to meet the mandated budget. It's been really the last 2 years. All the other years, we've done it and even last year we got to a decent place only because we offset the transportation budget at the fall town meeting by 440, I think it was, thousand. You'd have to offset it by over 700,000 this year, basically making up the 707 to go into either fully fund special ed later or do the transportation. And I mean, it's a wiffle ball one way or the other in order to balance that. And the biggest issue, and Bill, you know this, you've been around with me for a while now. The biggest issue that happens with this is you can't cut something that's required by law. You can only cut something that's not required. It's not required to, it's required to have specialized classroom or to have small classroom support, to have the counselor and all that. It's not to either have a best practice of 22 to 24 kids or less in the classroom at the elementary level, preferably 18 to 20. There's no mandate on that. That's just solid educational practice.
Yep. Thank you.
Joe, did you want to
I
ask a
did.
question? Go right ahead.
Dr. Byetta, I just want to clarify one thing. The 1.7 million mandate, is that a $1.7 million mandated increase, or is that just the total mandated budget?
So the 1.3 in the mandated, it's 1.3 in the mandated, 1.6 in the general ed. The general ed is all 100% contractual obligations. It's maintaining what we have. It's a level services budget. The mandated education is those 4.6 positions, as well as maintaining all of the special education requirements and ELO requirements that we have.
Okay, so that's $1.7 million more in mandated special education than we paid last year, or is
it's $1.3 million more.
Okay.
And that includes that 14% OSD. That includes increases in special education in terms of transportation, collaborative tuitions, all of that. And then you have your in the breakdown that I gave you, you have your breakdown of actual special ed staff and all of that stuff. But the contractual obligation is 2.25%. And then to staff, the non-union personnel are at 2.25 currently. Then you have the custodials, paras, administrative assistants in that ballpark as well. Most of them are within that dollar range. And then lastly, you have the significant increase that we're seeing in transportation costs. We have transportation costs that last year, the same ride has gone from $17,000 to $35,000 for this coming year. Just the cost of doing business is what's happening. Yet the $30, I actually use that as an example, yet the $30 from 15 years ago is still $30. Doesn't make any sense. The same discussion that I know that members of my committee are on, the same discussion on school choice. Why is that a flat 5,000? Why doesn't it just go up 3% a year? And at least we would have a couple more bucks in that line item. But there's no love for that right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Paul.
Paul or Paul?
Paul. Sorry.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah, Dr. Beater, you mentioned one student from Boston being trucked to Norton. Who gets to pick where they go? Like, could somebody from Springfield want to come to Norton? You could have $100,000 transportation budget for that.
That is, yeah. The McKinney-Vento is really the student was in a town. They became homeless. Their current place, sometimes a motel, hotel, sometime an in-law, sometimes a family friend, sometimes state housing support. Option is Boston. Automatically, you have a bill. So yes, we've had Fall River, we've had Barnstable, we've had Boston, we've had Weymouth, and then it's about finding the right transportation company, because I can't just turn to a bus company. I've got to really, because we're talking about busing maybe a family of two, maybe just one. So you're looking at everything from private cabs. You can't put them in an Uber or a Lyft. So that's illegal. So you basically look around for the transportation and B, the best price. I mean, we've seen some of our transportation costs be $80 a day, go to $275 a day. And by a day, I mean pick up, drop at school, pick up at school, drop at home. We're not talking about they're going shopping.
Thank you.
No
Sure.
stops in between. No errands.
Well, Chief, to your comment, though, I think your comment's worth one more statement, and that is McKinney-Vento is a great thing. Kids need to get to school who are homeless or disenfranchised in some way. I get it. This is another unfunded federal mandate. It's just a continuation of adding and adding and adding. We know they have the money. I mean, I listened to the Mass Taxpayers Foundation yesterday. I had a meeting with them, and we're still sitting on $900 million of ARPA funds and funds from 2022 as a state. We're also sitting on $1 billion of the wonderful tax on the wealthy that was passed by the Commonwealth voters. So there's money there. It's just a matter of the share of the pie. 119 communities are in the same position as Norton. We're getting $30 or $60 or hopefully $100 per kid. And yet, like I think I shared last time, one of my dear colleagues is in a very small community and they're getting $12.50 per kid. Imagine us getting $12.50 per kid. We would be discussing Mike and I would be discussing how potentially some of that money should go to the town to offset some other costs, like is being done in other communities.
How long before we get out from behind that, Dr. Beater, as far as the bad funding formula that's biting us? So
we're getting a lot of real positives on the 119 communities really just being tired of this, because it's been between the low end of 119 and the high end of 132. of this whole 30 thing. Now, the SOA has 3 more years left. So the idea is that by the end of this SOA, in other words, all of these communities with the high needs getting this extra share, then we're all back in the same game. As I've suggested to you, what that's doing, though, is causing, in this case, more than 6 years, but at least 6 years of 119 districts not getting their fair share of SOA. So it makes us fall behind. And we are seeing, as you know, an increase in high needs in our community of Norton. And in almost every community, it's going up. So once you get into that high needs category 9, 10, 11, and 12, boy, oh boy, do you start to see some money. We're currently category 6. It's going to take us a number of years to get to 9 unless the formula is changed.
Disappointing. Thank you.
I just want to note that Steve Evans joined us at 7:44. Paula, did you have a question?
I did. Dr. Bayetta, you were mentioning about layoffs, and, they would have to start collecting unemployment come June 16th. This would be layoffs that would happen because we're not fully funding the mandates. Oh, you're muted.
So if you take the mandates, you have to fund those. If you're $700,000 short and you're not funding $1.7 million in $1.6 million in general ed, your pie just grew by another 700,000 of cuts that you have to make. I won't be able to cut a paraprofessional or special education teachers.
Right.
Today I spent this afternoon with our paraprofessional representatives. We meet once a month, or once, I think it's once a month or once a few times a year. I can't remember now, but we really looked at our specialized programs where most of those staff are mandated to be part of. We're going to have 31 programs next year. We started with 13, as you know, as I've stated before, a number of years ago when I first started. But here's the kicker. The number of students needing specialized services is just growing by leaps and bounds. And, as a community, we have a responsibility. The problem is that the funding sources for that right now doesn't help Norton the way that it should.
Right. And then you mentioned that, us having to pay the unemployment would put us more in the hole.
Correct. Yeah.
So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to not fully fund the mandates right now. If it's going to put us in a worse situation.
Yeah. So the way that we've done it, and I'll defer to Mike. Mike and I have had the last few years just as kind of, Mike, here's the number I really need at town meeting just to not lay off a bunch of people. That number is just significantly bigger this year. That's the difference. If we got the difference of the 707, I should say it this way because somebody might think it's illegal, but I always say, wink, wink, Mike, I'm coming for 450. And we kind of say, okay, it's better than creating a bunch of unemployment lines. It's just that number's bigger. It's at least that 707. And that still leaves us a little short, but we could hopefully with some retirees over the summer or resignations, and I don't say hopefully wanting people to leave. I'm just saying those things happen. Then maybe the number of folks that we're unemploying could become lesser than some of the numbers that we're currently internally calculating. It would still have some hurt, but it wouldn't be as big of a hurt.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bill.
Dr. Bayetta, getting back kind of to the transportation thing, more so when we're, either picking the student up from Boston or sending out to collaborative somewhere. Would there be a way to kind of, get together with your neighboring school districts, and if they have people going to the same place or that hotel motel with the homeless people, have several coming down this way? Is there a way to pool it together versus everybody paying a full share for one?
Right. So we do that, those types of situations, but when you get into the homeless type of situation, that becomes very tricky for a number of different reasons. Most of it because it's never 2 or 3 coming from the same place. If we have those kids coming from the same place, we will do that. But in most cases, it's not those situations. In terms of our special education students that are going out to the collaboratives or even the privates, you may recall the pay the bill or get sued from town meeting a few years ago. And that was this, as you remember, during COVID, the bus companies cut the deal on receiving 72 cents on the dollar and as much as 76 cents on the dollar by the state as a recommendation so that they could be, quote, ready on day one. In other words, don't lay off your drivers because it's impossible to find drivers, which it still is right now. That's part of the game as well. So what we've done is we've basically have utilized our yellow bus service to also be do partial of our special education services, and then we have our minibus drivers that are also doing some of that. And that's an area to consider growing. Having, if you're going to have X number of students at a collaborative, maybe expand that. But that's got a cost to capital. It's got a cost to the town for further employees. These folks would be not under Mass Teachers, but under the county system, which always has a charge back to the town. So it's just a different approach.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Bayeda?
So if I may, there's no questions, and feel free to email me if you have more questions between now and the time that we see each other at town meeting or another meeting if needed. I just want to send a sincere thank you to the current members of the FinCom and the previous members of the FinCom that I've been able to have many laughs, many back and forths, but always felt like going to FinCom was never a problem for me. I always felt welcomed. We agreed to disagree on some things. And like Mike said earlier, you folks have to do what you have to do. No hard feelings on my end. I appreciated all the years that I've worked with you, and I know you're in a pickle almost every year, but I thank you for the time, and to the past members, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bayeda.
Madam Chair, I just want Joe to know he can't leave yet. He's got 2 articles, so
just get to the articles.
Premature.
just get to the
Just get to the articles.
I think he was ready to hand those over to Jen. I don't know, maybe.
Oh, okay.
No.
Whatever's
up next.
All right, if I could share my screen. Next, we would go to the special town meeting warrant, Article 3, operating budget supplements.
Mm-hmm.
So the operating budget supplements, you can see we have a request from the schools, $100,682 for transportation, $15,000 for our insurances, and $10,000 for Medicaid reimbursement. So it's a total of $126,682, with the funding source coming from 001-910-511-5171 health insurance. And Joe can talk about the transportation.
So this is that wonderful discussion of homelessness that we had earlier. So this is the added amount for this year alone. We have to end the year, as you know, fiscally balanced. So this is what gets us there. Hopefully we have nothing else between now and June 15th. But this is where we are. We've seen a triple number increase in the terms of number of students. We break down every single one of these rides, if you will, according to the daily charge, how many days. So it could be 100 days. It could be on the first day of school. We have actually had students that have ended the school year homeless and started the school year homeless and been homeless in some cases as long as 2 years, as defined by McKinney-Vento. So this is to balance. We have absorbed all of our major areas throughout the year by just, as you know, I froze the budget early. Very happy that I did, because I thought that this number was going to be a lot higher, to be quite honest. But we feel that this will get us to the end line.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, when it says the funding source is the health insurance account, is that the monies that were kicked back from the holiday, from the 2 months of not being?
So, correct, because we didn't have to pay health insurance for 2 months. We have excess money in the account, so we'd just be transferring that from that account to this account, these accounts.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
Mike, how much in total is in that health insurance account, and how much is already being spoken for in this fashion?
None other is being spoken for in this fashion. The rest would be certified as free cash to be used in October at the town meeting. And I'm not sure, I'd have to get the total to you, but it's significant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So Mike, we did not vote on the school budget, but I didn't know if that's because you wanted to have Dr. Bayetta present everything that he needed to present before we voted on anything, just to
Yeah,
not
if
take up their
we,
time.
yeah, you could vote on these while Dr. Bayetta's here in the next article, and then go back to the budget.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Bayetta, or questions on Article 3 at the special for the operating budget supplements? Seeing none. I'm pretty sure. Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 3 of the special town meeting. I do believe you need to name the funding source in its entirety, so have fun, Paula.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I move that we recommend Article 3 from the special town meeting, appropriating $126,682 from account 001-910-511-5171 health insurance account to account 001-300 Norton Public Schools Transportation in the amount of $101,682, and account 001-940-570 miscellaneous insurances in the amount of $15,000, and account 001-940-570 miscellaneous Medicaid reimbursement in the amount of $10,000.
Second.
Thanks, Bill. I heard a motion and a second, so I will take a roll call vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
yes,
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes. So that is 10. As I know sometimes you ask, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And next is on the annual warrant.
The Special Education Stabilization Fund. article.
Correct. Is that Article 13?
I was going to ask you that very same question.
Let's see. Oh, no, we got the long zoning article in the way here.
No.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Landed right on it.
And this is an article to set up a special education stabilization fund. Joe?
Thanks, Mike. So the committee has changed the language in this from 100,000 to 10,000. That's been the one change. The committee would still like to see the discussion and potential vote at town meeting.
So it's kind of difficult to hear you, but it sounded like you said the original language or request was for $100,000, but it's been dropped to $10,000.
Yeah. It's just gonna take longer to get to have something there, but it still starts at that was their idea.
Start building it. Gotcha. Okay. Any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes. Go ahead.
maybe it's in here. What's the funding source for that 10,000?
It basically could be done in a number of different ways. Mike, I don't have it in front of me, but it speaks to the idea of it could be coming as part of the budget process in terms of through you folks, like you do regular stabilization. It could be coming from excess funds that we have in special education, i.e. any end of the year special education that can't be rolled over in terms of circuit breaker or any of those line items. And quote, instead of general fund free cash, it could potentially go into that line item, into that stabilization account.
But is this 10,000 right here and now? And where would that, we're still one of these three sources could fund it? Or is this up to 10,000 at some future date when we have 10,000 available?
So the typical way that this would work is you put money, you start with a minimum of putting in money on a regular basis when you have the money available. And then from there, once you get the fund to a certain amount, if you have, let's say a student moves in and they cost $300,000, if you had $500,000 in there, then you could potentially say, instead of hitting free cash that year, instead of hitting the operational budget that year, you could go to town meeting and get the two-thirds vote to move the funding. The argument for and against is, on one side, it's if you're able to move some funding at the potential end of a fiscal year and target that. And the example I've used is Medicaid reimbursement, which goes into the general fund, potentially could be utilized in that way. Not necessarily 100%. It's my understanding that the town gets something, we get most of it, but the fact is maybe there's some discussion that could take place around what percentage of that number should be moved in there, because those are monies that come from direct services to special education students. And then, as just one example, the argument against, and I'll defer to Mike on this because I think he knows a little bit more, is that a stabilization account, regardless if it's your traditional stabilization account, the rainy day account, or this account, one way or the other is going to be viewed as, quote, a stabilization account. And so you need to try to put some money in there, or else Moody Blues or whatever they're called now that's a rock group. The folks could nail you on not having enough money in there.
The Moody Blues appreciate that reference, however.
Some of my favorite music.
Any questions about the Special Education Stabilization Fund?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Zach.
So what is the process for removing money from this stabilization fund? So let's say there was 100,000 in there today and you wanted access to it. What is the process?
Process would be, in general, it goes through the same process that you have right now. It would go through Select Board, FinCom, and it would require a 2/3 vote of the town meeting. And it can only be utilized for the purposes of special education.
So for me, I understand where you're trying to go with this, but in the 3 years that I've been on this, or the three budget seasons I've been on this, committee, we just barely get by. there really isn't, no money to, if we put 100,000 of this today, with the budget situation we've already discussed, you'd be at the next town meeting looking for that $100,000 just to pay the bills, to keep head above water. So I'm not sure I'm seeing it, and we already have a stabilization fund that we should have 5% in, and we don't have 5% of that now. So we're under what the minimum should be to protect our credit rating. And you really need to put $1 million back into that in the fall to try to get to your 5% level of $75 million budget. So we're just creating another account that we can't fund. I personally can't support it.
Just say it with a smile, Zach. Say it with a smile.
He usually does. Thank you, Zach. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Steve.
So the definition of special ed, is it just those line items that are deemed special ed? So it can only be, the funds in this account could only be used for those line items.
That is
And
correct.
the other question is it potentially, or is it possible with your bottom line budget to move funds after they've been moved into the special ed from this stabilization fund to fund other line items in the school budget?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Steve. So the way the regulation on this has been is that through the auditing process, we would have to show the line item is directly special education. We could not move, quote, the bottom line and then put it in the superintendent's salary. That was a joke. But yeah, your question, Steve, is it's very specific the way the regulation has been written.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Joe.
So following up on that, Joe, is this really to protect special education rather than the other way around? So I'm trying to figure out why a separate account is needed if there's a stabilization for education.
Well, so think of it this way, Joe. The biggest reason for a stabilization account is a rainy day, right? In this case, special ed, which is happening on a pretty regular basis. Right now,
why wouldn't you just take that money from the regular fund?
Well, right now I'm about to cut positions, and that has not been discussed, that we're going to use the stabilization account. And there's no love. There's no love for it. And there's no love for all the other stuff.
And that's what I meant by, protecting special education. This would earmark those funds for that, so that
there have been some communities where, let's just say you're lucky enough at some point down the road, which can happen. I can think of a couple of communities where this has happened, where the number of students going out of district has come to a point where the difference between what you have paid out that year and circuit breaker for tuitions plus operating budget, and gives you an excess in your circuit breaker that would seem right to go to the town and say, let's not use this money for anything else. Let's move it into that stabilization account. One of those communities is at over $1 million. Now, they got lucky as hell in 1 year. But the fact is, and I was actually back-to-back years in order to be able to do it. So that's one reason. Now, you could also say, well, here's the money back and stick it into the stabilization account. At that point, it's just stabilization money. It's not special ed money.
Got it. Okay.
Quote unquote.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Zach.
just to touch on Joe's point, I mean, the reason why we're not talking stabilization fund is because just like for the same argument that I've made of not supporting the special ed stabilization fund, we haven't funded our stabilization fund to a high enough level to be able to hit it when we have a problem like this year. We haven't done that for years on end. If you want to take $3 million out of the stabilization fund today, you would crash the town's credit rating. And that means all your debt that you have, all the debt service we have, those interest rates would skyrocket, and we would have trouble borrowing for the future. Not to mention the senior center and the other projects that haven't been fully funded yet. So I'd be all for this if we had money to fund it. If there was, I think this is set up for communities that fully fund their education, and then say, okay, we have an extra $1 million. Let's put it in a special ed stabilization fund So that's access to it. Right now, we can't fund our basic services. We're talking layoffs. So for that reason, that's why I'm not supportive of this.
Madam
So
Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
So I first of all, I clearly understand what Zach is saying. I've been living the dream for 10 years, so I clearly get it. I think my argument would be, as noted earlier, if there's a good amount of money in the fall town meeting, there's the potential to start something. There's the potential to fund stabilization at whatever number of people think is right. There's the potential to offset the costs of not laying off people. There's the potential to put money into the stabilization account. However, I get it. I know exactly what you're saying, Zach.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Cody.
Just a point of clarification for me. Is there an obligation once the stabilization fund is set up? Let's say we approve it and it gets set up. Is there then an obligation that we have to fund it to a certain level, or is it just sit there and we can, like, if it's funded originally with $10,000, there's no obligation to fund it any further than that, and it just sits there as a potential?
So two parts. I'll defer to Mike in terms of legal counsel's perspective and view on this article. I'm sure legal's probably looked at it, or if not, they're going to. It's typical that like any stabilization account, there's no, like, you don't have to put money in, and B, it could be, it's typically capped at a percentage. It's not consistently growing as your rainy day account. But again, I'll defer to the legal experts on that.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a requirement to put a certain amount of money in or to maintain a certain balance unless that was part of the article or the motion. And my only question is, if we're looking to establish this stabilization account and put money into it, would it be better to wait till the fall to do it?
So, Madam Chair, if I can, just a follow-up question on that point. When we're voting on this at the annual town meeting, the vote is to approve the formation of the stabilization fund and not necessarily to fund it. Is that correct?
I'll defer to Mike, but that's the intent, yes. So the understanding could be, let's say there's the potential of no action on town meeting floor. You could bring it back after you know what your free cash is and put your first X number of dollars in there later.
Okay, and if we did that, once the stabilization fund is set, those funds are specifically earmarked and cannot be removed for anything but what they're designated for.
That's correct.
But the general funds that go towards the school budget could be shuffled around such that you could pull from stabilization, or is it's only in a rainy day situation where you have to, like, you couldn't cut the annual budget by a certain amount to be able to pull from that stabilization fund?
So the idea here is you have a deficit in special education because of a situation, i.e. the best scenario that everybody's been using has been a unanticipated out-of-district placement that has moved into the district, not anticipated as of the Maytown meeting, not June. The child arrived after July 1, and it's a significant financial hit to a tight budget, let's say, and instead of going back into the operational budget or a supplemental budget, for that particular case, you would be funding available. You would be going to get that proportion that you're asking for from that fund.
Okay. So I guess, Madam Chair, my thought on this is, to Zach's point, it's not like we're sitting on a pile of money. We're actually in a hole with not enough money. And I wouldn't necessarily support setting up this this fund and this account unless it was very clear that we did not have to put money into it until such time as we actually may have it to put in. I want to get caught in a situation where we agree to establish this fund, that we don't have the money to put into it, that we then are forced to put money into it, that is then earmarked and we can't use it for anything else, if that makes sense.
So Cody, to your question, I guess I would defer to Mike. I believe that most of our articles on the school site that we sent to the town for the purposes of the articles go through some type of legal review. I think that's what happens, or at least I know that's happened with a bunch of other articles that we've done on our side, but I'll defer to Mike on that.
And as I said before, if you set the account up, it doesn't mean you have to put any money in it.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bill.
So this discussion kind of, to me, is circling back to my original question, where when the article was read, it alluded to, and it's starting with $10,000. So I'm not necessarily opposed to setting up the account, though I think it's kind of silly to set up an account with no money, but we don't have any money to really put into it. So I don't know where the $10,000 figure even gets to be played into this, because we don't have it. So it's one thing to set it up, but it's another thing to say, and oh, by the way, we want to put 10,000 into it. There's like two parts to it, and this article isn't really defining it in two parts.
I mean, I'll defer to Mike on this, not to put him on the spot, but I guess I would say asking town council to review the article for the purposes of Bill's question, and I think it was Cody's question. But that's, I received my notice today that I'm supposed to ask Michael for council utilization.
And I could hardly hear you.
Am I breaking up? Sorry.
Thank God.
I said, I got my memo today from you about having to follow town council going to you. So I guess I'm saying, may I ask you to ask town council about this article?
Wait, I sure hope we have to repeat everything we say from now on for the rest of this meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe, go ahead.
was the school committee unanimously in favor of this article?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Zach.
just a note, I guess, to all the members of the committee. For us to maintain a 5% stabilization fund, which is what everybody recommends, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, on this.
No, you're right.
You will need to put in the fall time, everybody's got their, things, they want to have all this money in the fall town meeting. But you will need to put $1 million into that stabilization fund, stabilization fund in October to maintain 5%. You are $1 million short right now of that 5% mark. So before everybody goes spending it, that should be considered as well, because you don't have 5% in there right now.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Sandy.
Can I ask clarification? I thought that the gauge was always 3 to 5%. Is there a difference between, is there a disadvantage to having the 3? Is that where it affects the bond rating, or?
I'll defer to the town accountant, but I believe the goal always is, and I think in our, I'll have to look at our financial plan, but I think it is 5% is our goal.
There is a James on this meeting. I don't know if it's the James Quello, but I won't listen to just any
Hello?
James on this matter.
It is the
Can you hear
James.
me?
Hi, James. We can hear you.
Yes, it is recommended to be 5%.
But where will our bond rating take a hit?
We don't know for sure until after the fact. Usually the bond rating agencies look at the finances of the town, just like they do our regular business. If they see that we're using the stabilization fund, they're gonna look at it negatively. So it could change a little bit or it could not. I mean, it's not guaranteed that it will go down if we take a little bit of money out, but it's possible. The chances are higher that it will go down than that it will stay the same. Pretty much what they probably would be looking at is what other towns around us are doing. If everyone is going to the stabilization fund, all of the other towns are doing the same, it won't look as bad. But if we are one of the only towns in the area that are using the stabilization fund, then they're going to look at us as the outlier, the one that's being irresponsible.
Madam Chair, if I could continue. So James, I'm not necessarily talking about taking money out of the stabilization fund. I'm kind of following up on what Zach was saying. What if we don't put enough in and we're only at 2.5% or 3%? Is that where we're going to potentially take a bond rating hit?
They usually look at reserves at the end of the fiscal year. So they look at how much free cash we have at June 30th. And lucky for us, we usually have a decent amount of money at that time. So our reserves in total are usually above 5%. When you count the unreserved fund balance and the stabilization fund together. Then as we go into the October town meeting and we deplete some of the free cash, at that point we go below it. But we always hope that by the time the year closes, by the following June, we'll get enough to replenish it again. We're going to eventually get into a situation where if we don't have a lot of free cash at the end of a particular year, that's when we're going to see the effects, and our percentage is going to be lower than where the rating agencies want to see it. So say, for example, 2025, free cash comes in at $1 million, and we're already expecting to use all of it at the October town meeting. We will not be at the percentage that they like to see us at. So it doesn't happen overnight. You know, if we take the money out of stabilization fund at the October town meeting, the rating agencies may not know about it until the following June. It depends when we go out to borrow and they do their review.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may, I have no problem. I have a school committee meeting tomorrow. I have no problem bringing back to the committee prior to you taking a vote, if you so wish, or saying to them that the concern is A, there's no money at this time, and B, that there is a concern about not being at 5% in the regular stabilization, and that would be the first forecast. Let's get to 5% there first, and then let's really consider this upper account. If that's the wishes of the FICCOM. Again, I don't know how they'll act on that. Nick is on, Nick Schleicher, member of the board, is on. It is what it is. Our discussions have been to try to start something, but we understand the picture of where the town is on this, and happy to compromise, send that back to them, and then send you a memo that says under other business tomorrow night that they've said, we understand that those are two good reasons, or they'll say, no, Joe, those aren't two good reasons. We want to maintain it.
Madam Chair, can I just ask one more question about the, so when you talk about this stabilization fund, let's say we added this special ed stabilization fund, would we be looking at, when they talk about the 5%, would you be combining the two, and between the two you have to have 5%, or is it you want 5% in each? Like, how does that, I guess, how does it all impact? How does a separate stabilization fund impact that 5% number?
They would combine them. So if we have X amount in this stabilization and the X amount in another stabilization, they would look at that.
For a total of 5%.
Right.
Gotcha.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Cody.
So Mike, just to kind of further put a point on that, if we were talking about, we need the total of 5% is what is it, 1.2 million, something to that effect that we have to have set aside? Is that the ballpark?
5% of whatever we approve for a budget.
Or 3 million, whatever,
Yeah.
like somewhere in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm coming back to the same thing that I think Zach is, which is, we need to overall get the goal to that 5% for the bond ratings. But if we do have the ability to combine both stabilization funds towards that calculation, I'm not opposed to setting this up. I just would want to make sure that we're not obligated, and I think we've made it clear that we're not obligated to fund into this stabilization fund just because we set it up. But if it's a combined calculation between this stabilization fund and the general stabilization fund, I would think that if we're building up to that 5%, taking a look at what the overall percentage of our annual budget spend is on special education as a percentage of the overall town budget, I'm not opposed to, kind of pay as you go, like we're paying into those two separate stabilization funds, because any, I guess, allocation between the two is still going to have to come before finance committee of funding into one or the other, right? So the existence of the stabilization fund doesn't give unilateral authority to anybody to put money directly into it. Correct.
And if I could, Madam Chair, just a couple things. That's why, myself, I'm always of the belief, well, we have a stabilization fund. Why do we need another stabilization fund? If there's an emergency, money can be taken out of the stabilization fund to fund a move-in tuition. And then the other thing, looking at the rating agencies, whether it's a special ed stabilization account or a regular stabilization account, if you take money out of either one of them, you're taking money out of your reserves. And rating agencies are going to say, well, you couldn't fund your budget. You had to take money out of one of your stabilization accounts to fund your budget. So either way, it's going to affect your bond rating. So if we already have a stabilization account and there's an emergency, you go to town meeting just like you would with a special ed stabilization account, and you move to take money out of it to fund special ed.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Cody.
So just a follow-up, is there any, I take your point, and I understand, it's like having two different savings accounts and deciding which one you're going to pull it out of. Is there any separate fee or annual charge associated with maintaining a separate account that we need to be taking into whenever we're taking into consideration, whenever we're considering setting this up?
James could probably talk more on that. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the fee is. I'm sure there is a fee, and also we earn interest on it, but
It would be the treasurer collector would be opening a bank account, and whatever fees that bank may charge, depending on the amount of money, there may be no fees since banks want your money. So there may be no fees. It depends on what type of account it is.
which gets back to the question, if you start divvying up your money and you have a small special ed stabilization account, are we gonna pay money and earn less interest on that if we kept it all in our regular stabilization account where we wouldn't pay a fee and we collect greater interest?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Zach.
I think the bigger issue here is, we were talking about, having 12 bank accounts where we don't have money to even pay our bills. If we actually funded the stabilization account all these years and we had above the floor 5, 6, 7, 8, 10%, then we wouldn't even have any of the discussions. Joe would say $83 million. We'd say, let's take $3 million out of our $10 million stabilization account. We got by a hard time. We don't fund it. So, we keep talking about opening accounts and this, It's like me saying, okay, hey, honey, we can't pay our electric bill this month. Let's go open 3 accounts so maybe we can juggle them around. Let's borrow from one credit card and put it on the other. I mean, this whole conversation really is verging on ridiculous because we're broke, okay? We don't have any money. If we were financially disciplined and, put some money in the account over the years, we wouldn't be in this position. So, I mean, this town needs to decide. I think that the elected officials decide what they want to do. Do they want to put an override or do they want a 50 student class size? Whatever they want to do. And then we can talk about how we're going to structure the accounts. But until that point, this is a moot point. And this whole conversation is ridiculous.
Follow that.
I'm not going to follow it except to say, Zach, I love it when you get hot because just gets us exactly.
Bottom line.
Looks to me like you're making a motion. That's what I hear. Let's do it.
I think the conversation has possibly run its course. Any final thoughts on this conversation? If I could recall Article 13.
Here's to the day that we actually have the money and can have a legitimate conversation about setting this fund up.
Here's to that. All right. I think we're done with that then. Thank you, Dr. Baeta, and members of other folks from the school department and Nick from the school committee for attending and answering all our questions. Really appreciate it. Congratulations. What's that?
I said just real quick as I go, well, Jennifer O'Neill, Dr. Jennifer O'Neill has been voted as the next, Dr. Jennifer O'Neill has been voted as the next.
We can't hear you, Joe.
Okay.
I was just, he's like, okay, I'm out.
He was saying you're much better off with Jennifer O'Neill as your superintendent next year. Is that what you were saying?
That's what I heard.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. I was a 9 on a 9 and she's going to be a 10 on day 1.
That's generous for yourself, but we are congratulating you as well, Jen. So thank you.
Thank you all. We look forward to working together. So
yes, thank you.
See you all.
Great.
Have a great night. Thank you so much for having us.
Great. Thanks.
Madam Chair. Is that?
Are we going to vote?
Yeah. Do we have to take a no action vote on that?
So we could take a vote. Mike, were you about to say something?
I was going to say you could take no action or
you could vote.
That would be the easiest if that's what you want to do.
We can do that. The chair will entertain a motion to take no action on Article 13 of the annual town meeting warrant.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Paula.
I move that we take no action for Article 13 for the annual town meeting to set up a special education stabilization fund.
Okay, and so everyone understands. Oh, sorry. Was there a second?
You want it?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. But just so everyone understands, we're voting in the affirmative to take no action. So if you mean to take no action, you vote yes.
And Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bill. Oh, I heard a couple people.
Paul, go ahead.
It was Steve.
Oh, Steve.
I just want to, could you explain the difference of voting no action versus no, or bringing the article up as written for us to take a yes, no vote?
So
that was gonna be my question.
Does anyone have a comment about that or an opinion as to one or the other?
I wanted to know if it was being no action just because we're kicking into the fall.
I mean, certainly that's an outcome that could take place where it could be brought up again. If whether it's voted down, we vote against it now, or we vote no action now. I think there's a potential that it could be brought forward again in either of those cases. So if anyone wants to make a case for, basically the FinCom is making a statement either way. When we vote no action, it will say so on the warrant. And then when it comes time for the moderator to say Article 13, there's no motion read, and the moderator says, it's closed for lack of a motion or something like that. Someone from the floor can, of course, move it. If there's a reason to in someone's mind, they have to do a certain procedure to be able to do that. But we as the FinCom would not take any action on it. For the opposite or the other way procedurally to handle it, if we were to vote against it, we're taking a stand as the FinCom saying that we are voting against it. And probably there will be questions as to why it would say in the warrant that it was not recommended by the FinCom. And then there would be questions asked and answered by myself, Mike, whomever, to just indicate why the FinCom had voted that way. And a synopsis of this conversation would be offered. So that's my understanding. If anybody has a different understanding, please feel free to jump in.
So, Madam Chair, even though I seconded the motion, given the debate of the past half hour or so, it sounds more like we're a no than a no action.
Okay.
Agreed.
I think I heard some agreement.
And I think I definitely agree. But I also think it's important for us to explain the reasoning to the town folks, besides no action.
Okay.
Which a no would do or not recommended versus no action. Because then we'd have the half hour to an hour, at town meeting trying to explain it versus not recommended, which could be a smaller explanation.
Sure.
For
You
the
never
chair,
know.
for the chairman to explain.
Yes, this chairperson would prefer not have a half hour explanation / conversation.
Madam Chair,
That was Zach. Yes.
you could always put up a 30-second clip of my rant, and that would explain it pretty good for her.
This is ridiculous. Anybody that tries to comment.
And get it loud and clear.
We're not going to say not recommended. It's just going to say this is ridiculous instead.
But, Madam Chair, from the comments that Zach had made too about the need for a second fund, especially in the foreseeable future, I don't see it myself. So I'd like to see us vote no. So I don't know if someone wants to make that as a motion.
So we would need to.
Madam Chair, do I make a new motion?
Do we need to rescind our original motion?
Well, if no one, was it seconded?
Yeah, I did.
Whoever made the motion can withdraw the motion if they want to, and then you could have another motion.
Okay, Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I withdraw the motion to take no action on Article 13 for annual town meeting.
And we don't need a second on that, right?
No.
And then I make a
Okay.
new motion.
So it sounds like the board would like to take a vote on Article 13 of the annual town meeting. So we will do so if I have a motion to do so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul.
I move that we recommend Article 13 of the annual town meeting to establish a special education stabilization fund.
Second.
Thank you. So that everyone understands this vote, a yes is to recommend the article and start the fund or establish the fund, and a no is not to. And it sounds like that's where we're headed. So I will now take a roll call vote. Sorry, Steve. Oh, it's hard to hear you, Steve. You're kind of breaking up. I did not catch that, and it looks like nobody else did either.
$10,000 funding.
Did you say $10,000 to fund it?
No. Do we have to reference the $10,000 as well in the motion?
That's a good question. It's not in the,
It was all in one article, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, you don't, there was no, not in the article, there's no mention of 10,000, so you don't have to discuss it.
All right.
good question. So I have a motion and a second for Article 13 to recommend. Paula,
No.
Steve,
No.
Trace,
no,
Sandy,
No.
Joe,
No.
Bill,
No.
Paul,
No.
Cody,
No.
Zach.
Can I think about it for a few minutes? No.
And I too am a no. That is 10. The motion does not carry.
All right.
What's up next?
So last meeting, all the budgets were voted except for the school budget. And if I could just start a discussion. I know the superintendent mentioned about adding 750,000 to the budget in the fall. And obviously in the fall, we feel like we'll be able to supplement the budget. I just want the finance committee to think about, right now it's a 2% increase in the budget. 3% instead of an increase of $666,646 would be about $1 million increase in the budget. And then to get to $666,646 to be added in the fall, you're looking at about a 4% budget. So I just want the board to think about, what do we look at extending ourselves too thin, because if the budget goes up 4% or 5%, and then the next year we're looking to go up 3 on that or 4 on that or 5, it just something to keep in mind.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
So, I don't want to start to create a major debate here and whatnot, but how many other budgets have mandates that we didn't fund? So, my question isn't to give Dr. Baeta or any other department their wish list, but if they're being mandated to do something and we don't even fund that, that's a concern to me. So that's why I asked earlier in the discussion tonight, how much money is in that little health savings account? And why can't we take some portion thereof to fund the mandate and stop there?
Yeah, you can't, because that is next year's budget. So you can do that in the special because it's funds for this year, but you have to wait for it to be certified as free cash, and you would have to do it in October.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Cody, go ahead.
So, Mike, I understand the point you're making. I think Bill and I may be of similar opinions here. If we're already underfunding to state mandated levels, why are we worried about, we're essentially playing a shell game of kicking the can down the roads where next year's budget can cover the shortfall for this year's budget. But it just means that next year's budget is that much further behind because we're using free cash to cover this year's budget and hoping that next year we have enough free cash to cover the year after's budget. And the state mandates are not going down. You know, the state's not going to decrease the amount of spending that's required. So I understand your point. Like if we take that in the fall and increase it, that then we're looking at the overall increase on top of an increase. But I would argue we need to be talking about that and whether or not, you know, we need to have serious discussions about, do we need to level set our budget? Do we need to bring up the potential of an override to level set everything and get it to the levels it needs to be so that we're not talking about kicking the can down the road every single year and hoping that fall has enough free cash to cover the shortfall from the year before.
I agree with you, because, you know, you only can work with the money that you have. So there's only two ways to level set it, either reductions or an override.
And I think the point from Dr. Baeta is, you know, reductions mean drastic, and Zach mentioned the same thing. You're talking about drastic changes to, you know, the level of services that you have in town.
Yep.
And increasing class sizes and increasing transportation fees and cutting extracurriculars from school, like all of that means, you know, if we're cutting across the board in order to get to that level, then people need to understand what the ramifications of that are.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead. Was that Paul?
Yes, please. So Mike or Cody or Zach, I asked Dr. Beata specifically how much underfunded he was from the state mandates, and he said he was 16% over as far as the state mandates. It's just the special ed that's the killer, I think, because he says he's 16% over the state minimums as far as that, because he used the word underfunded quite a few times in the presentation. So I wanted to know how bad he was underfunded. He said he wasn't as far as the state mandates. It's just a special ed, I believe. But again, it doesn't matter. We are definitely way behind the eight ball here if we got to try to come up with a couple $1 million to satisfy everything that he needs right now, you know, and I don't know where that would come from.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bill.
Paul, I think he indicated that to meet the mandates based on the budget, the 666,000 increase budget that's being proposed in front of us, he's still $707,000 short to meet the mandates.
My exact question, though, Bill, was how much are you underfunded from the state minimums? And he said he wasn't. He was 16% over the minimums. So it must be the mandates are far exceeding the minimums the state want. Then, Bill, you know,
right?
Which doesn't really, like I said, the numbers just don't seem to add up no matter how you slice it. It just seems like we're going drastically backwards every year.
Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Zach?
I appreciate the conversation, you know, Cody brought up and Paul and everybody else. But I think these issues are beyond this committee. I mean, you know, we have a certain amount of dollars and we can decide how we're going to allocate it. And, you know, I have a child in school. I know a lot of people on this committee have children in school. Of course, we're all concerned about it. But on the other hand, we just had a public hearing and not one parent showed up to express their concern. So, I mean, sometimes maybe they do need to feel some pain in order to take some action. But that's above this committee. That's for the school committee and the select board if they want to take action to increase revenue. This is the revenue we got. If it means 100 kids in a class, then that's what it means. It's up to the politicians and to the residents to put something on the ballot. I mean, we just, you know, I'm not one, and I've said this before, to cut public safety. I think that's my number one priority, followed by education. That's my personal view. You guys may have different views, and that's fine. But I just don't see what this committee can do to fix the problem. I mean, we can do, this is what we have, this is what we can spend. If the politicians want to put something on the ballot, then so be it. That's fine, do it. But so far, I haven't heard from any of them that they want to do that.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Paul.
what's frustrating, Zach, is that we're gonna hire 4.6 new positions because it's a mandate, and then we're gonna have to lay off 4.6 positions because of that, and then pay 60% of the savings into unemployment. So it just becomes such a crazy mix of funds being wasted as far as the unemployment costs and stuff. So I don't know what the answer is, but it's just a crazy dilemma.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Cody, go ahead.
Just touching on your point, Zach, I mean, public safety, we're talking about underfunding everything, and we're facing a cliff on keeping Chartley open in March of next year because the grant money runs out. And so we're underfunded. I know there is a lot of chatter online, and people think that our taxes are too high, but it's not. You get what you pay for. And if you want Chartley open, you got to pay for it. You want good schools, you got to pay for it. And right now, we've been able to kind of tide things over by using grants and ARPA funds and, Band-Aid and sticky tape to put it all together. But we're going to hit a cliff at some point. And to your point, Zach, I mean, it's going to hurt. And there's going to be a lot of complaints because we're not able to fund, and there'll be more potholes, and Chartley will be closed, and we won't have any, we won't have all the good stuff.
Cody, I'm not disagreeing with you. But I just think it's outside the scope of this committee is all I'm saying. We really have no say in the matter.
Great.
And just a couple other notes from what Paul said, if they do lay people off, the only good news is there's a drastic teacher shortage everywhere, so everybody's looking for teachers. So I don't think anybody will be on the unemployment rolls too long. But again, that's neither here nor there. And on the Chartley thing, when we took that grant money, everybody needs to remember, you cannot lay those people off. You agreed, or you will have to pay back that grant. So we are locked into those firefighters. Or you will have to pay whatever it was, $1 million. How much was it, Mike, that we got in the grant? That is, you're going to get a bill from the federal government on that if you do that.
And just, do you know what the cliff on that is? Like how long after the grant you have to maintain it? Because there will always be a cliff. It may not be next year, but like that starts the clock. So it will be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if Paul remembers.
Yeah, I'm not sure because when we did it, we had to guarantee it for a certain number of years. I'm not sure if that was still in there, Mike, or not. I thought that was one of the things that we didn't have to match anything, though. We used to have to match it, too. So it was free money, but again, you never stop paying for it sometimes.
And it'll come back around next year. Like we've been funding it through the grant, and so we were under way over budget this year, and next year we're going to have the added budget item for keeping Chartley open.
Right.
So.
In the buildings.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ambulance funds are going to be used to continue. I think that was discussed in the previous meeting.
Yes.
That was firefighters on.
Yeah.
Correct.
But they're going towards that, and instead of towards something else, they could go towards.
Mm-hmm.
Preaching to the choir, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bill.
Hey, Mike, when all is said and done, if this budget is approved as is,
Yep.
where's our free cash?
Free cash, well, we still have some special town meeting articles to address and contracts. So our free cash right now is around 450,000.
And then if everything is approved in the special or the annual, we're going to get down to what, like 100?
Probably in that area, yeah.
Thank you.
I will say, just to add to what has been already said about the override conversation, and in complete agreement that this is sort of beyond us. It's a way bigger problem than a FinCom can solve, even as brilliant as the 11 of us are. But every year we write a little blurb basically assessing the entire year for the town report. And every year we put in that blurb that the town needs an override. And every year, I'm guessing 5 people read it. But we have been making that statement, not really as a recommendation, but just as a recognition of where our budget is at and how we are constantly faced with these questions of not being able to fully fund or level fund or level service the budgets that we have. And without an override, we can't. So we have made that statement, whether it's reached the ears of people and really understanding and sort of like Zach said, hitting them where they understand, like, oh, my child is in a class of 35 because, or 50 or whatever the number is. Whether it actually reaches people where they feel the impact is another question, because I think that's what also we've done an amazing job at is, I mean, tinkering with pennies to avoid feeling that impact. So that's just what I'll say to add to that conversation.
Maybe we should put it in bold this year.
It is like the first page, but
Maybe we should have put the train $1 million into an override bid just to lighten up another $1 million.
Madam
More than
Chair,
100 people to town meeting.
yeah. Zach, go ahead.
can I ask the town manager for an opinion here? What if we were, this will be like the water department compromise. Well, you know, you guys weren't here. Somebody just weren't here earlier in the week. But what if we take $1 million at this town meeting, Mike, from the stabilization account and give it to the school department with the complete understanding that that money comes right off the top in the fall town meeting back into the stabilization account? Does that help them any?
I'm sure it would. And would the commitment be that there wouldn't be a request for more money in the fall?
That would need to be made clear to them. You know, now I'm saying that as a compromise position. We take it out, but we got to put it back because of the previous issues we discussed on the credit rating. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there for people to ponder.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Paul.
Go ahead, Paul.
I just wanted to say that I think that's a great idea. I mean, you were saying that stabilization is a rainy day fund, and I feel like us not being able to fully fund the mandates for the school department is a rainy day. And Mike, I don't think you answered Bill Rotundi's question. He was asking if there were any other departments that had mandates that were cut.
Okay. Well, the fire department obviously has mandates, as Paul can probably tell you. There's a requirement that there has to be 2 men, 2 firefighters on every vehicle. They can't leave the station without 2 people on that vehicle. So if the overtime that was cut stays cut, then that would leave them they wouldn't be able to fill positions, and it would affect their ability to provide the service because they wouldn't have enough people to operate all the equipment coming out of 2 different stations.
And that's actually a double whammy because if we don't have the adequate staffing for staff, the additional rescues, we get mutual aid to come in, and it's poor customer service for starters because the people are waiting there in their house while they're having a heart attack for another town to show up to take care of them. But then we lose that revenue that would come in from that call as well. So it's a customer service issue, plus it's lost funding. So it really is an imperative that we do, try to fund that adequately for whatever Chief Simmons feels he needs to keep Charlie open with the rescue there and stuff. So, I imagine Chief Clark has similar mandates, Mike, as well,
So that is the case. It's not just the fire department and the school department right now.
Correct.
Especially, Mike, because Chief Clark's, the department is got state certification now, which actually kicked in additional requirements as well to show that level of expertise and the quality in the policing, which is so important with everything going on nowadays, you know?
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
to that point, though, we funded those budgets. It's only the overtime which comes into play for people sick and this, that, and the other thing. So it's kind of like Dr. Bayetta's, if someone moves in, well, I got these extra costs I wasn't planning. But for the most part, I think we funded everybody else's mandates. And so again, to kind of Zach's point, you know, 707,000, I think if we're going to play with stabilization, that's what he needs to fund his mandates. And that's what we should be trying to get him.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Cody.
I just want to make sure that if we're having that discussion about taking from stabilization to fund now, that would be essentially revising the budget here with because we're pulling from stabilization, it would still require, is it a 2/3 approval from town meeting to do that? So we would essentially be approving this budget and then introducing a new article under the special town meeting, or is it just a separate?
No, you would approve this additional 707,000, and then when you vote on Article, what is the operating budget? Article 7, the way it would be funded would be X amount from the Hicks Fund, ambulance receipts, tax revenue, stabilization. And then if the 700,000, say if the 707,000 at town meeting wasn't approved if this budget isn't approved by a 2/3 vote, then you would have to go back and take out that 707,000 and amend it.
And do we have the money coming back from the, what was it, medical, whatever, holiday?
Health insurance holiday.
Health insurance, yeah, is there more than 707,000 coming back from that?
Yeah, you'd be over $1 million in that.
Okay.
Like, is a stabilization a 4/5 vote or 2/3?
It's 2/3. I believe.
I thought that bar was set higher just because they didn't want to have it be tapped on a regular basis without real need.
No, I believe it's 2/3.
My recollection as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
just for me speaking, I would support this with the understanding that there is some assurances that money goes back into stabilization from the school committee, the future superintendent. I would call them back in, all of them, for a meeting.
Mhm.
That's the only way I would support it.
That seems like it would be a prudent conversation to have. So do we want to delay?
Zach,
Sorry, say that one more time, Cody.
I said I appreciate the suggestion, Zach. I think it's a good idea.
So
Discussions.
go ahead, Bonnie. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if that's something that you want, let me know and I'll reach out because the school committee, I think, meets tomorrow night. So I would let the superintendent know what you're thinking.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Mike, you mentioned that there'd be possibly over $1 million just from the insurance holiday. Any prediction what the free cash in general might come in at this year coming up?
I am not sure. And James Puala would attack me if I
I
gave
know.
you a figure.
Well, and whatever we get back from that would go back into stabilization. So it's just it'll reduce the free cash because we're funding it now instead of kicking the can down the road and then using the stabilization to replenish.
Because if you don't fund it now, then he's going to have to do the potential pink slips no matter what and everything and upset the apple cart.
Yep.
Okay, so does that mean that the committee would like to wait to vote on the school department funding until we let Dr. Bida know we'd like them as the school committee to discuss this? Perhaps tomorrow night would be a late addition to their agenda, and then we'll discuss the sort of whole picture for the school department at our next meeting, which I assume would be Monday.
Monday.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
I'm not sure Mike would know better. I mean, can we approve this and just do an amendment if they do accept, I guess, our terms for another 700 and whatever that number is? I don't know what the easiest way is to do it.
Either way, doesn't matter. You could do it on Monday night. You're going to meet Monday night anyways.
I think my recommendation would just be to hold off and vote on it once, but I'm open to what suggestions everyone else has.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I agree with you. I think we asked Mike to talk to Dr. Baeta to bring that before the school committee tomorrow. I don't think that waiting the 4 days or 3 business days or whatever is going to severely impact this. So I would rather know going into it that we have that assurance rather than, change the number here and then have to amend it again later. It just seems like a lot of work for not a lot of benefit.
I agree with it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
I know I've been speaking for myself, but all the other members are agreed to this. Before we do go to the school committee, I don't know if you want to take a straw vote, if everybody's on the same page.
Yes, be more than happy to hear from everyone.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Sandy.
So we're talking about rather than waiting until the fall town meeting to supplement the budget from free cash, doing it now, correct?
From stabilization.
With the understanding, as Zach said, that then the free cash will go back into the stabilization. Is that what the proposal is?
Yes, and there would be no additional requests from the schools at the October town meeting.
Okay.
In order to try and prevent the layoffs and additional charges that would go along with this.
Again, Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul.
just for the record though, we're kicking the ball down the road again for another year. It's going to put us another $1 million and change behind the 8 ball right out of the gate to start next year. Correct, Mike?
Say that again, Paul.
But yes, boosting their budget by the, whatever it ends up being with the additional $1 million and change, it actually puts us that much more behind for next year to start.
Well, it would be more or less a 4% increase in the budget. So then next year, whatever the percentage increase is going to be on top of that 4%.
Yeah, it's going to be compounded.
Paul, it's Band-Aids and duct tape. That's all it is.
I guess so, Zach, huh? I know fire alone, Zach, is $300,000 cut in his budget for the overtime that he's hoping to get back in October, just so we can keep Charlie open and man the second rescue and stuff.
Yes, so we are in, as Dr. Bayetta said, a pickle. As we are every late April, early May, as we have these discussions.
Madam Chair.
No matter how long you've been around. Yes, Cody.
So, to Paul's point, I think, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were in the hole last year for school budget, and the recommended budget, reduced the requested by 900,000. This year it's reduced by 700,000, whatever it is. So it's not like we're level setting this, but we're level setting it to the point where next year there's going to have to be discussions about where we're cutting from, because we're level setting for a year. But next year, unless we've got a lot more tax receipts coming in from new growth, we're still subject to the 2.5% increase. And if we get more state mandates that are above 2.5% on the school budget, then we're always going to be in that same position. So I think you're right, Paul. I think, we're always going to be looking at that. I think by doing it this way, it makes it less drastic next year, because we're giving the 4% this year. If we do it that way. So, but we're still going to end up facing the same shortage next year unless we get some sort of windfall, new growth.
And Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Bill.
I think someone had recently made a comment, we're doing this to avoid layoffs. I don't think there's a guarantee that getting them to the mandates still doesn't, with the overall, shortage still in the requested budget. I don't think just getting to the mandates gets them to where there still might not be layoffs. So just so everybody, the way I'm seeing it, there could still be layoffs, but as a town, I think we should be covering mandates.
And when you talk about layoffs, if I could, layoffs, the effect on services obviously is important, but when it comes to revenue, the maximum Massachusetts you can collect in a year in unemployment right now is $31,000. If someone gets laid off and they're on the family health plan, that's a savings of $21,000 if they're off our health insurance. So if they get laid off and get a job somewhere else, that's $21,000 off of the health insurance. So,
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Paul.
Bill, to your point, I think you're right. I think that even if we give them the 707 for the sped shortfall, that there's still going to be a shortfall in his regular contract for budget. So,
Fair point.
yeah, 1.6, I think you talked about for the general ed.
Yeah. So, we're not, I don't want to, put into print in the minutes, or, if anybody ever watches us on a rerun that, FinCom said this would guarantee no layoffs. It's not going to guarantee that. It's just going to, we're just trying to get to the mandates, and then, beyond that, it's going to be what it is.
Madam Chair. Go ahead, Sandy.
Oh, go ahead, Sandy.
I just want to clarify too. I think he said there's going to be a couple of retirements. So it sounds like no matter what, even without layoffs, there's going to be a loss of positions, right? There's going to be potentially bigger class sizes because we're not going to replace those retirees and or people that maybe move out of district.
Mm-hmm. Cody, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm just, I think the point that I lost whenever I said before. So last year, I feel like last year's budget for the schools was somewhere in for whatever reason, 1.3 million is stuck in my head as the shortfall for last year from the requested. And I think the reduction was 900 something thousand. This year, it's roughly 2.4 million from requested to recommended at this point. So even by funding the additional 700,000 to get to the state mandates, we're still 1.7, which is more than what we were under last year. So it is, Paul, you're right. We're continuing to grow. It's not getting any better. It makes it marginally less bad, I guess. Doesn't make it good. It just makes it less bad.
That's usually where we land. Bad or less bad. This is always an uplifting meeting. And we wonder why nobody comes to our hearing. I'm not sure where that leaves us in terms of voting on this budget. It seems like we've kind of a bit gone in circles in agreement in the sense that it really doesn't matter. But it could be misleading or it misunderstood if we fully fund it with $1 million now, and then actually very little might change for the school department in the long term. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think Zach was looking for a straw poll before Mike went to the school committee.
Okay, I'm fine
Right.
with that. So I guess we could say in terms of determining how we go forward, if you would prefer to vote tonight and vote the school budget as it appears on the screen and have Mike speak to Dr. Bayetta and then change things on Monday if need be, we can do that, or we can wait until Monday to vote the whole thing.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes, Cody.
could we just do the straw poll on whether or not people agree that we're going to ask to do the
$1 million.
fund? Yeah, the million or 700, whatever it is, if we're.
Oh, 700, yeah.
If we're
707.
polling to go to the stabilization fund to do that. Because if we don't have enough people wanting to do that, then,
Okay.
there's no point in kicking the can.
Okay.
707, 550.
Thank you for that exact amount.
553.
553. Oh, there we go.
Where's Peter when we need him? So
He's at
let's do-
EDC.
Got it. Okay. That explains it because normally he'd be here. So let's take a poll right now as to whether or not it is of your opinion that we should ask the school department whether or not, or the school committee, whether or not they want to consider the other 707 be added from stabilization in the spring now. So I will go through the roll call and just go in the normal order. And we'll do it that way. Paula.
I think we should ask the school committee, and I think we should wait until Monday.
Okay, Steve.
I do not think we should supplement the budget.
Okay, Trace.
I think we should ask the school committee and vote on Monday.
Sandy.
Same, ask the school committee and vote on Monday.
Joe.
Ask the school committee, vote on Monday.
Bill.
Yeah, the same.
Paul.
Just a point of clarification. They're going to not be coming back for anything else in the fall, or will they still be coming back? I thought that was part of it, that it would be we'd fund it now, but that would be it, so that we could go ahead and replenish the stabilization.
Yes, that is my understanding as well. And I think that was what
Okay.
Mike
All right.
would explain to Joe.
Okay, so yeah, let's vote on it on Monday. Let's see what Mike finds out.
Cody.
Same.
Zach.
Yes. With the stipulations I spelled out in the beginning. Thank you.
And I too am a yes. So that is 9 yes and 1 no. So that everybody knows how it was voted. So Mike, that is our request of you, is to run that past Joe for them to discuss tomorrow night with the stipulation of not adding anything to their budget in the fall so that we can replenish the stabilization account.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Cody.
Just looking at, like, I doubt the school committee is going to say no, thanks on more money. So assuming that that's the case, when if we go that route and it gets approved and like the warrant gets revised, is there going to be a note in there that it has to carry the 2/3? Otherwise, it has to be revised on the floor. Like, is there going to be an explanation included within the warrant specific to pulling from the stabilization fund to fund the budget as recommended?
Or Mike, would it make more sense, Mike, to actually have the stabilization fund vote before the budget?
No. You'd have to do it as part of the motion to fund the budget.
So the instructions under in the warrant will be, or like whenever it's read by the moderator, it will say, because this includes a pull from stabilization, it requires a 2/3 vote. And then if it failed at town meeting for lack of 2/3 majority, then we'd have to reconsider the reduced budget without the pull.
Right, exactly. So the motion would be made and seconded, and then it would either be Bonnie or myself that would have to explain to the town meeting what the thought process was.
What does that
Maybe
say?
I'll do that. Okay, thank you.
All right. So
Article.
this would be Article 1 of the special town meeting. This is a prior year bill of $392.50. This bill, we didn't receive it until after the fiscal year closed. They never sent it to us. So I ask that the board vote to allow the payment of a prior year bill, $395.20, to come from account 001192570.
Any discussion on Article 1's unpaid bill of?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Zach.
why couldn't we do this out of the FinCom reserve instead of going through this whole process?
It's a prior year bill, so it requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting.
Yeah.
It's last year's bill, not this year's.
Any questions besides that? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul.
I move that we recommend Article 1, unpaid bills in the amount of $395.20.
Second,
Thank you, Bill. Hearing a motion in a second, I will take the roll call vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Paul. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, Bill. I skipped over you.
that would be a yes for the Article 1 of the special town meeting.
Oh, it's for the special. Gotcha. Thank you. And
Welcome.
Paul, I heard your yes. And Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am yes. Thank you for clarifying that, Bill.
And I will say that was nice of Joe Byetta. I texted him to see if I could call him after the meeting. He let me know the Bruins are losing. Thanks, Joe.
Just the news just keeps getting better here tonight. What it is.
Article 2, separation expenses. I recommend no action. We don't need to fund that right now.
Okay. And this is also for the special Article 2, and the chair will entertain, or is there any discussion? It gets late. I forget these things. I should at least ask. Seeing and hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to take no action on Article 2 of the special.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul.
I move that we take no action for Article 2 of special town meeting for separation expenses.
Second,
Thanks, Bill. Hearing a motion a second, I'll take the vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
yes,
yes,
Sandy, Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes.
Article 6, I recommend no action. This would be to put funds into the capital planning. And we can do that in the fall.
Okay. Any discussion?
Mike,
Hearing,
you have a list of capital items for the main town meeting, though, of this town meeting. Do we have enough funds in there for that?
We do, yep.
anyone else? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to take no action on Article 6 of the special town meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I move that we vote no action on Article 6 of special town meeting.
Second,
I will take the vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
yes,
Sandy,
yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes.
And Article 7, this would be for amendments to the capital plan, which we don't need. So I recommend no action.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to take no action on the special town meeting Article 7.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I move that we vote no action on Article 7 of the special town meeting.
Second,
Thanks, Bill. We'll take a vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
yes,
Sandy,
yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes.
Article 8. So back in the spring of 2020, we had a storm, and during that storm, a tree came down and it took out the traffic signal and mast arm out in front of the fire station. Also did some damage to the town hall and the street light out there the door has been fixed and the street light's been replaced. But this has been held up because it's going to be done by the contractor that's doing the work out on Route 123 right now as part of the state project. And so our cost to replace that is just under $85,000. And we did receive insurance money. We're looking for a supplement right now. We received $46,000 from the insurance company that has long been certified as free cash. And we are putting in a supplement for another $39,547. So this which also would be certified as free cash eventually. So we're looking to use $85,000 from free cash to repair that traffic signal in front of the fire station.
All right. Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Cody.
Mike, is that just the 39,000 that we're responsible for? Is that the equivalent of the deductible under the property?
No, the total cost of all the repairs was just under 86,000, and they gave us an estimate. The first appraiser that was out, it was 46,442.50. But when we finally got the estimate from the state for the work, it's 85,000. So we're looking for a supplement from the insurance company of the 39,547 to be added to that.
So this is a frictional cost on free cash because the expectation is we will get the proceeds from the insurance company, but in order to pay for the bill, we've got to pay it up front. Okay.
Yeah. And the initial 46,000 is already received by us long ago and went into free cash.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Zach.
I apologize for being abrasive tonight, but is this traffic light gold or platinum? I'm just curious, $85,000.
That's what I thought too.
It's union labor there, Zach.
Well, since I don't think that's directed at any of us, I won't consider that to be abrasive. Any other questions? The chair will then entertain a motion to approve Article 8 for the platinum/gold traffic signal in the amount of, do we have the exact?
$85,000.
$85,000, Article 8 of the special.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I move that we recommend Article 8 of special town meeting to transfer $85,000 from free cash for
Second.
the replacement of the traffic signal.
Thank you, Bill.
Street light.
We will take a vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes.
Article 10, this was brought forward by the Traffic Safety Committee. The Traffic Safety Committee is looking at making improvements to the intersection of 123 and 140. I don't know if any of you know that intersection. And so what we're looking for is 25,000 from free cash to be used to hire an engineer to start looking at the intersection. And I spoke with Representatives Howard and Barrows today, and they feel confident that they've put 25,000 in the bond bill, and they feel confident that we may see that also. So it would give them a start anyways to start looking at the intersection and see what some of the possibilities are.
Thank you, Steve.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I heard Joe first. Go ahead.
Mike, I seem to remember a year or two, sometime in the past, that there was a group that had done maps and had a number of different options, I guess, for that intersection. Was that not an official engineering?
It was no
official engineering.
It was not. So they're actually taking two of the options that came out of that study and are now looking for the engineers to look at them and see what would have to be done in order to institute one of those options.
Okay, thanks.
And that was Serpent did that study for us.
Right.
Bill?
Yeah, Mike, this has been floated about for many years. So kind of in that same vein, this hasn't been, engineered or whatever 5-10 years ago, that we're just spending money that we've already spent and then let lie on in a cabinet somewhere collecting dust.
Well, we didn't spend any money on it before Serpent did that for us. And it just conceptual drawings, nothing that's been looked at from an engineering standpoint. And so this would be the next step.
Thank you.
Does
Madam
either?
Chair?
Oh, go ahead. Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, just to Bill, this is still, they're talking at least a decade away. So, this is, we'll be eating oatmeal before that's done.
Well, my question was going to be is I believe a foundation has recently been poured for a new gazebo and was wondering if the gazebo or anything else that is currently on the common would be impacted by either of the two possible redesigns. I don't know if you know the answer to that.
I don't.
Chair.
Hopefully the gazebo is modular.
Not if it's gotten a foundation.
No, they're just pouring a concrete slab. It'll be put on top of that.
Gotcha. We're also about to put in a very similar intersection. Well, not about to, let me say, in a few years, we're going to put in a very similar intersection to the end of North and South Worcester, which will be remarkably similar to what we currently have at the intersection of 140 and 123. So that's fun to think about redesigning it after it's put in. Who else had a comment or question?
Bonnie, I thought when they had the Charlie's Pond drained down a couple years ago, they should have filled in that corner and did a nice roundabout there.
Oh, God, if only.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Cody.
Two things. First, it's speculative, but what I had understood was the option they were looking at was taking 140 on the other side of the church and moving their parking lot to where the current road is.
Mm-hmm.
So they would basically bypass the other side of the church and move it that way. That was my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I guess my question is, we're fronting the money, the $25,000 for the study, and if we get the grant or get the money from the state, it would come back. But would the town have to vote to approve the idea of doing this?
Yes, eventually.
The next step
When something, they know which way they're going to go, they'd have to come back and then seek funding for that.
So if we went that route, so we take the 25,000, we do the study,
Mm-hmm.
and then it has to go to town meeting for people to approve whatever the recommendation is for the spend on moving that, or is that going to be a state spend because it's a state road?
A portion of it may be a state spend, but like the traffic signals down at North and South Worcester, we're paying for the engineering to try and move it up on the transportation improvement plan quicker. So we may be requested to do the same with this.
Okay.
Any further questions on Article 10 of the special? I think, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 10 in the amount of $25,000 for the engineering study, Route 140 and 123, Article 10 of the special.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Paul.
I move that we recommend Article 10 for the special town meeting to take $25,000 from free cash to hire an engineer for the traffic study of 123, 140 intersection.
Second.
Hearing a motion in a second, I will take a vote. Paula.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
I heard that. So you're good. Trace.
Yes.
Sandy.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Cody.
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
And I too am a yes.
And Article 11. This is for the bike trail project. This is seeking $15,000 from free cash for engineering services that will take us through the construction phase. And any changes that the engineers have to design, work with the Alternative Transportation Committee on different aspects.
All righty. Is there anyone here that was heavily involved in the rail trail that would like to make any comment?
It's finally started building
Oh,
construction.
hey, Sandy. You might be excited to see this, given the date that is noted in the article.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Cody.
just a question. Was this like unanticipated additional cost? Is this from the original, the plans that were funded? Like where is this coming from?
Yep, it's unanticipated additional cost that we need.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Zach.
To Sandy, is this going to be completed this year? What is the timeline on that?
That's a Mike question. I think, what, 2 years, Mike?
Yes. So it'll be 2 years. The work they're doing now is time intensive. They're doing some of the drainage work up on North Washington, and they did say that they should be headed down Cobb and then start working on the trail going down within a few weeks. So I think once they get through where they are now, it'll move pretty quick.
Other questions?
Is it going to go in stages? Like presumably they'll, like each section will open up at like what they're working on now on the other side of North Washington. I imagine that it would, like they'll do all of that and it'll be paved because they're putting in sidewalks over there right now.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll open it up in sections because generally when contractors work on a project, they don't want to hand it over until the entire thing is done. But that I'll ask them about that.
If they're not, they're going to have a hard time controlling the site, especially running between Mansfield and North Washington there, where it's connecting to the existing trail.
Yep.
Questions or comments on Article 11 of the special? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve Article 11 of the special for $15,000 for the bike trail project.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I move that we recommend Article 11 of special town meeting to transfer $15,000 from free cash for further engineering for the bike path.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. I'll take the vote. Paula.
Yes.
Steve.
No, I think we can use the money elsewhere.
Okay. Trace.
Yes.
Sandy.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Cody.
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
And I am a yes. So that is 9 to 1 to 0, or what? 9 to 0 to 1.
Okay.
One of those.
9 to 1 to 0.
Thank you.
It's late.
And
It is late.
the last thing tonight is reserve fund transfer requests. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 requests. And the first one is from the treasurer collector requesting $3,300 to supplement the personnel services shortfall.
Okay. Are you going to read through them all? Or are we gonna
Okay. Yep,
them
I'll read them
individually?
all. So
I was asking. It's, make sure you weren't waiting for us.
Why don't I do that then? All right. So from the treasurer collector, $3,300 for staffing costs, legal, $35,000, Inspection salaries, 23,000. Animal control salaries, 7,600. And miscellaneous, which is this is for gas, fuel, 30,000. And the total is 98,965.
So this is not on for town meeting. This is immediate transfer.
Yes.
Gotcha. Any questions about any of the 5 reserve fund transfers?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Steve.
Mike, I'm just curious, what's driving these expenses to go over budget or not have it budgeted in each budget? And then what's the brunt of the legal costs?
Okay. Treasurer collector, there was a crossover when the new treasurer came. The 2 treasurers were working together for a while, which wasn't anticipated. So that's the 33,300 there. Some assistance from the former treasurer. Legal services. They're just, we never really know when the year starts what we're going to have. I know that there were a lot of issues with planning this year where they had site plan reviews that they needed assistance on from engineering. We also had a couple legal cases that, some unanticipated expenses for legal, but the select board recently put in a policy on use of town council, just trying to get more of a handle on it and for the future. So hopefully that'll work. Then I spoke about this at the previous meeting when the question was, how come the salaries in the building commissioner's office were so much higher? One was that the building commissioner became certified during the year, and so the salary was increased. It was a contractual obligation once he received his certification. And also, right now, our permit fees are about 700,000 above anticipated. So obviously, there's been a lot of work, and the inspectors, the part-time inspectors, wiring, plumbing, they're paid by the job. So rather than being paid hourly, they're paid by inspection. So they've had more inspections than anticipated, which is a good thing. We're brought in a lot more revenue than we anticipated. And then animal control is just a shortfall in his overtime account and part-time wages. Trying to also get a handle on this with our dispatch center to try and limit the off-hours calls and weekend calls. Unless it's something really serious, I don't want them calling for someone to come in on a Saturday because a dog is barking. That can be handled on Monday. They can file their complaint and the dog officer can address it. So we're trying to limit some of that. And then the last one is the fuel. It's up and down, and we never know what the price is going to be. And so this year they're anticipating a shortage of 30,000.
So that's not any one specific department. It's all departments.
All departments, yes.
All right.
It's the gasoline for everybody.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Joe.
Mike, I see we're 13 and change in the hole. Do they expect that 30,000 to take us through to the end of the fiscal year, or do we think that they'll have to come back again?
We're keeping our fingers crossed that hopefully that'll get us through the fiscal year.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the reserve fund transfers? Mike, do we need to read them individually, or can we read the total, or read the accounts?
You can, if you want, you can just vote the reserve fund transfers as presented.
Mhm.
And you have to sign them anyways. So.
Then let's make sure we get it right. All right. If there are no further questions or comments on the reserve fund transfers, the chair will entertain a motion to approve them.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I make a motion to approve the reserve fund transfers totaling $98,965 as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Hearing motion in a second, I will take a roll call vote. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes.
And that's all I have. If you end your meeting soon, I think you'll be shorter than Bill was on Monday.
Well, he's a little rusty.
I
It's
think he
okay.
went till 10. And you'll get to see the overtime.
I will get to have dinner, actually. That's what I'll get to do.
Madam Chair,
Who is that? Zach?
it was Zach.
Yeah.
Mike, when you speak to Joe later, tell him that I purchased a home in Stoughton and I'm running for school committee.
All right, I'll tell him that. He'll enjoy that.
Good luck.
That's how I'll start the conversation.
Was the prudent investor article, Mike, Article 12 of
Yes.
the special? Okay. Okay. Is there any further business to come before the board this evening? We have a meeting Monday, May 1st. It's our next meeting. Do we anticipate Mike needing another meeting next Wednesday?
I hope not.
I feel the same way. So I'm glad we're on the same page about that.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
not to be that guy, but do we want to vote on minutes? Bill does not.
Typically when we go this late, we don't do them now, but I am open to the question
I'm
you just
fine not
asked.
doing it. I just didn't want to forget about it and then.
Paul is asleep. I am fine with pushing them to Monday. I don't have any new ones to add to the pile. So assuming we don't get any in the next couple of days, I won't be sending you any more.
Fair enough.
So if everybody's okay with
Though,
doing that
though
Monday.
if we did do them now, then the chances of you running past where I did are much better.
I didn't hear that. You just cut out. It's too bad. Is there any more business to come before the board? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paula.
I make a motion to adjourn, please.
It is 9:54, just noting the time.
Second,
Thank you. For that, Mr. Rotundi, who tried to push the meeting later. Paula,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
what are we voting on? Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes, and good night.
I too am a yes. Good night to you all.
All right, everyone.
Bye.
Night.